Hello, everyone, and thank you for spending time with me today. Oh my goodness, I forgot what I was going to say. Just kidding. Do you forget things like the names of people, where you parked your car, or where you put your cell phone or glasses? A cognitively normal person may occasionally forget where they put their keys, but a person with mild dementia frequently forgets this and may even forget what keys are for. I'm going to be discussing Alzheimer's disease and the symptoms that lead up to it. The symptoms of Alzheimer's disease progress slowly over several years, and sometimes these symptoms are confused with other conditions and may initially be dismissed as old age. First, I want to clarify the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's disease. Dementia is defined as a clinical syndrome that can result from many diseases, including Alzheimer's. It's generally defined as impairment in at least two domains of cognitive function. The impairments affect daily function and are chronic rather than acute. Alzheimer's disease is an age-related, non-reversible brain disorder that develops over a period of years. Initially, people experience memory loss and confusion, which is sometimes associated with normal aging. However, the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease gradually lead to behavior and personality changes and problems recognizing family and friends. Alzheimer's disease ultimately leads to severe loss of mental function. These losses are related to worsening breakdown of the connections between certain neurons in the brain and their eventual death. Alzheimer's disease is characterized by cognitive and behavioral problems. It is the most common cause of dementia among people aged 65 and older. Alois Alzheimer is the person credited for identifying Alzheimer's disease in 1906. One of Alzheimer's patients was a 51-year-old woman who had been hospitalized and was showing signs of dementia, which included memory loss, disorientation, aphasia, confusion, hallucinations, and delusions. Alzheimer treated her and documented her symptoms in depth, as well as his conversations with her. He noted that at one point, when she was unable to correctly write something, she said, quote, "I have lost myself," end quote. After she died in 1906 at the age of 55, Alzheimer asked for her brain to be sent to him for his research. While studying it, he discovered that it contained buildup of amyloid plaques, neurofibrillary tangles, and cerebral atrophy, which are characteristics that we now think of as hallmarks of Alzheimer's disease. Interestingly, it was not until 1995 that we found Alzheimer's medical records documenting his care of this patient. His notes gave us additional insight into his research and also allowed scientists to verify the brain changes he had described. The rate at which symptoms progress is different for each person. In some cases, other conditions such as infections, stroke, or delirium can be responsible for symptoms getting worse. Certain medications can also worsen the symptoms of dementia. Generally, the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease are divided into three main stages. In the early stages, the main symptom of Alzheimer's disease is memory lapse. For example, someone with early Alzheimer's disease may forget about recent conversations or events, misplace items, forget the names of places and objects, or have trouble thinking of the right word. There are often signs of mood changes, such as increasing anxiety or agitation or periods of confusion. As Alzheimer's disease develops, memory problems will get worse. Someone with the condition may find it increasingly difficult to remember the names of people they know and may struggle with recognizing their family and friends. Other symptoms may also develop, such as increasing confusion and disorientation, obsessive, repetitive, or impulsive behavior, delusions or feeling paranoid or suspicious of caregivers and or family members, problems with speech, and also disturbed sleep. By this stage, a person usually needs support to help with everyday living, such as eating, washing, getting dressed, and using the toilet. Hallucinations and delusions may come and go over the course of the illness, but get worse as the condition progresses. In the latter stages of Alzheimer's disease, the symptoms become increasingly severe and can be distressing for the person with the condition, as well as their caregivers, friends, and family. Why is Alzheimer's disease research important? Clinical trials are essential to advancing Alzheimer's disease research at a time when Alzheimer's is reaching epidemic proportions. Through clinical studies conducted over the last 20 years, scientists have made tremendous strides in understanding how Alzheimer's disease affects the brain. The greatest obstacles to developing the next generation of Alzheimer's treatments are inadequate funding for Alzheimer's research and recruiting and retaining clinical trial participants. There are challenges that are unique to Alzheimer's clinical trials, like the effects of the disease on memory, thinking, and decision-making may make it difficult to comply with clinical trial rules and protocols. Many people with Alzheimer's also have other serious medical conditions, such as heart disease, diabetes, and cancer, that may disqualify them for certain clinical trials. And almost all Alzheimer's trials require the participation of a proxy and/or caregiver in addition to the person with Alzheimer's. So essentially, that's doubling the number of people in the study. This makes it more challenging. Unfortunately, African Americans are 2 to 3 times more likely to develop Alzheimer's disease than white Americans. While Alzheimer's disease is the 6th leading cause of death for all Americans, it is the 4th leading cause of death for older African Americans. African Americans tend to be diagnosed in later stages of Alzheimer's disease, which limits the effectiveness of the therapies that depend on early intervention, and they are seriously underrepresented in clinical trials of potential treatments for Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease is thought to be caused by the abnormal buildup of proteins in and around the brain cells. Although it's not known exactly what causes this process to begin, scientists now know that it begins many years before symptoms appear. As brain cells become affected, there's also a decrease in neurotransmitters involved in sending messages or signals between brain cells. Over time, different areas of the brain shrink. The first areas usually affected are responsible for memories. Although it's still unknown what triggers Alzheimer's disease, several factors are known to increase your risk of developing this condition. Age is the single most significant factor. The likelihood of developing Alzheimer's disease doubles every 5 years after you reach the age of 65. But it's not just older people who are at risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. Around 1 in 20 people with this condition are under 65 years of age. This is called early or young onset Alzheimer's disease, and it can affect people from around the age of 40. Family history plays a role in your risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. The genes you inherit from your parents can contribute to your risk of developing Alzheimer's disease, although the actual increase in risk is small. But in a few families, Alzheimer's disease is caused by the inheritance of a single gene, and the risks of the condition being passed on are much higher. If several of your family members have developed dementia over generations, and particularly at a young age, you may want to seek genetic counseling for information and advice about your chances of developing Alzheimer's disease when you get older. The Alzheimer's Association website has more information about the genetics of dementia at www.alz.org. You can read about the 3 major hallmarks in the brain that are associated with Alzheimer's disease, which are amyloid plaques, neurofibrillary tangles, and loss of connection between neurons responsible for memory and learning. Amyloid plaques are made up of fragments of protein called beta amyloid peptide mixed with a collection of additional proteins, remnants of neurons, and bits and pieces of other nerve cells. Neurofibrillary tangles are found inside neurons and are abnormal collections of protein which causes the failure of neurons to function normally and eventually die. The loss of connections between neurons responsible for memory and learning can't survive when they lose their connections to other neurons. As neurons die throughout the brain, the affected regions begin to atrophy or shrink. By the final stages of Alzheimer's disease, damage is widespread and brain tissue has shrunk significantly. As our country ages, the number of people touched by Alzheimer's only continues to increase. Already more than 1/3 of America's adult population has some personal connection to the disease, either through a spouse, family member, or friend. An accurate and timely diagnosis gives you the best chance to adjust, prepare, and plan for the future, as well as give you access to treatments and support that may help. If you need more information on Alzheimer's disease, there are many organizations that can tell you more about the condition and offer support for those who have it. You can go to the WebMD website to get more information from the Alzheimer's Association, Alzheimer's Disease Education and Referral Center, Alzheimer's Foundation of America, Alzheimer's Disease International, Bright Focus Foundation, American Psychiatric Association, the Cognitive Neurology and Alzheimer's Disease Center, Family Caregiver Alliance, National Council of Aging, Caregiver Action Network, National Institute of Aging, National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke, and the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Administration on Aging. Please refer to the handout that I have provided for the telephone number and/or email address for these organizations. Scientists and researchers are continually searching for a cure for Alzheimer's disease. In conclusion, although the human and societal cost of Alzheimer's disease is staggering, there is hope that earlier and better diagnosis, increased knowledge, effective symptomatic drugs, and the support of the patient and family throughout the stages of the disease will have a dramatic impact on the number of people affected in the future, and also the quality of life of those who are currently affected. The fast pace of research and development in Alzheimer's disease is unique in neurological history and should lead to a better future for aging populations. The Alzheimer's Clinical Trials Consortium, known as the ACTC, is a clinical trials organization initiated in December of 2017. It is designed to accelerate and expand studies for therapies in Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. The ACTC's mission is to provide an optimal infrastructure to utilize central resources and shared expertise to accelerate the development of effective interventions for Alzheimer's disease and related disorders. This concludes my presentation on Alzheimer's disease. Take care of your body and be healthy.